So one thing that was important for me was to realize that no stranger's opinion was more important than my baby's basic needs.
If you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
21.
Welcome back to Wildly Empowered Women. Today I have a beautiful guest with us all the way from over in Utah. Her name is Lindsay White.
My baby is hungry. She needs to eat to survive, and no stranger's opinion should ever come before that.
Her whole message is around really empowering women to breastfeed wherever, whenever.
There needs to be a brand out here to just let mothers know.
Welcome back to Wildly Empowered Women. I'm your host, Jessica Zallins, and today I have a beautiful guest with us all the way from over in Utah, and her name is Lindsay White. She's a woman that created the Little Milk Bar, and she's someone that I've followed on Instagram for many, many years since I was breastfeeding my own two sons. And her whole message is around dropping the cover and really empowering women to breastfeed wherever and whenever, because that is our right. And it's such an important message and something that I've wanted to discuss on the podcast for quite some time now. She was the absolute mastermind behind some of the movements and I guess little hashtags and sayings that are out there with Drop the Cover, Milk Maker, and Mind Your Own Tits. She's got her own brand and she's created the baby blanket and the Milk Maker tea as well. And she's someone that if you don't already follow her on Instagram, you're probably going to want to after this interview. So her Instagram is in the show notes. We'll be referring to it quite a lot. But let's jump straight into it. So Lindsay, is there anything that you wanted to add to your story and maybe elaborate on in terms of what inspired you with this movement and really instigated you to empower women to feel comfortable breastfeeding anywhere?
Well, I think you did a great introduction. I live in Utah with my 3 kids. I have a daughter, Allie, who's 11, Coda, who's 6, and Frankie is a year and a half. And I started this brand because, no one really prepares us for a breastfeeding journey, and no one really talks about it a lot. I realized very quickly that every single breastfeeding journey that you go through is completely different. Even if it's the same mom and you just have different kids, each kid is completely different. And some journeys are easier than others. With my daughter, Allie, I was, a brand new mom, had never really been around breastfeeding. My mom, I'm the youngest, so I never saw her feed. And so it was a whole new world for me. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just powered through, and it was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. And I remember just being raised like if you're out in public and your baby gets hungry, you do the polite thing, and you remove yourself and you go into a private area to feed. And that's all I had ever known. So that's what I did with Allie, and I just felt so alone and isolated all the time. I think I made it 18 months with her. So for 18 months, I was feeding alone in a dark room by myself. So when I got pregnant with Coda, my son, 5 years later, I made a promise to myself that I would have more confidence that time around. And having that mindset shift really changed everything for me. It made my whole breastfeeding journey more enjoyable. I didn't feel alone. And so I was like, there needs to be a brand out here to just let mothers know that they can. That just because a stranger asks you to go feed somewhere, you don't have to do what that stranger tells you. You can feed wherever you need to, and you can have an enjoyable experience where you just don't feel isolated all the time. So I started the Little Milk Bar.
I love that. And so what's the difference been between the 3 kids now? Obviously, you've shared a little bit about your first, but between the 3 kids and your breastfeeding journey.
Yeah. So the first one, I had no idea what I was doing. I remember always panicking, is she getting enough food? I always was worried that I wasn't producing enough milk. all those first time worries that you just don't know about. And like at the beginning, your breasts get really engorged and you leak a lot. So you're like, oh, I have all this milk. But then your milk, levels out. It's like supply and demand. It like starts to realize what your baby's drinking and kind of like creates what that baby needs. So like the demand goes down a little bit and then your boobs feel a little soft and not engorged. And you're like, oh my gosh, you get in panic mode thinking, I'm not producing milk. But then I called my lactation consultant and she put me to ease like that. I mean, and one, I didn't even know there was such thing as lactation consultants that would come to your home. Like that information was never even told to me by my doctor, by anyone. I just Googled it and, they like weigh the baby, so they can weigh the baby before they eat. And then after they eat and show you like, hey, she weighs 3 ounces more. That's how much she ate. You're like, whoa. So then with the second journey, you feel a little bit more confident. You're like, I got this. This is going to be easy. This is my second time. And then they throw you for a loop because you just have different issues. You're like, oh, that you can't get them to latch. And then your nipples are sore. And they have different feeding habits than your first baby. So you're like, this isn't normal. But really, there's no such thing as normal because, again, every baby is so different. And then with Frankie, my youngest daughter, who's 18 months now, I'm like, oh, this is my third. I got this in the bag. Like, this will be easy. I won't even go through that sore nipple phase because I know what I'm doing this time. And that humbled me real quick because I definitely had sore nipples. And it's just hard. They say breastfeeding's natural, but it doesn't always come naturally. It's a learning process for you and your baby. And your baby also has to learn to get that latch and how to, be the most efficient with getting your milk out. And sometimes that takes a while. So the biggest difference between the three is Frankie is 18 months and I don't see any end in sight. My other 2 kids self-weaned before 2. And this kid just wants mom's milk all the time. If I'm home, she's always on the boob. I don't know if that's how she feels her connection with me. I'm sure it's a little bit of all of it, hunger, but also comfort and nurturing. So we'll see how long she goes.
Yeah, I can so resonate with that. I thought that I was all across having my second and, I've done this. I know exactly what to expect. And then it was the complete opposite experience. Like I had a really good experience with my first and then the second was really hard. And I'm now 3 weeks out from having my third. So I just have zero expectation and I'm just going to go with the flow and whatever happens, happens, right? Like we know our bodies are so capable if you stick to it and you accept help. And like you said, like there's actually so much help available now, which is beautiful. In Australia, I don't know if you have this over there, but in Australia, the Breastfeeding Australia Association has a free hotline that you can call like literally at any time. Like I've called them at like 2 a.m. being like, I'm so worried about XYZ. I can't remember what it was now. It's probably something completely, not something to worry about. But the fact that you can just call someone and talk through it is so beautiful. I might put that in the show notes as well for any mums worried about the journey.
We don't have that here, but that is an amazing resource.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so what advice would you give to a new breastfeeding mum who maybe hasn't had the confidence to feed out in public or maybe has had some negative comments from either a family, which often it actually is people that know you, or from strangers?
Yeah. So I feel like there's 2 really important things for any new mother out there who's terrified to feed in public or just nervous to do it for the first time is one, just know your rights. It depending on where you live, but in the US, it's your legal right to breastfeed your baby wherever and whenever you need to, with or without a cover. So that first and foremost is so important because I did not know that with my first baby. So if someone did tell me to leave, then I would leave because I just felt like that was the rules. Like that's what you had to do. And then the second thing is I feel like it was really important for me to get in my mind that when you think down to the basics of what you're actually doing, because it can be terrifying to feed in public. It can be terrifying. Every person that walks past you, you think, oh my gosh, here it is. They're coming to say something. But 9 times out of 10, they just walk past and they're not even noticing you. So one thing that was important for me was to realize that no stranger's opinion was more important than my baby's basic needs. And I feel like once you narrow it down to that and understanding what it is that you're doing, it's my baby is hungry. She needs to eat to survive. And again, no stranger's opinion should ever come before that. So I feel like once I just dumbed it down to that in my mind, it was so much easier to realize, like, yeah, I don't care what a stranger says. I don't care if somebody gives me a dirty look. It's like we almost turn into mama bear and we protect our little cubs at all costs.
And I love and respect that so much in your content. It's so like 0 F's given because you're just like, this is my message and this is, my mission is to empower women with this message. So let's talk a bit about your personal brand. It's something that obviously, a lot of people follow you for how empowering you are for mums. It's very authentic and it's something that I've seen rise in just, I don't know how long I've followed you for. I feel like it's been since my first son and he's almost 6. So, I've seen a lot of change and obviously a lot of growth in your following. Can you share a bit about how you built that, how you got here with your brand and particularly with your personal brand?
Before we go on, I want to ask you a super powerful question. What would it mean to you to make decisions based on your soul rather than your bank balance? Freedom to me means having true autonomy and choice in your life to live based off your values and soul's desires, rather than what you can purely afford for you and your family or what your job requires of you. This is why I've been empowering women for the past almost 5 years to earn more with pleasure, earning your true worth without the insane hustle and with actually having choice in your life. It is so much more about how you earn rather than what you earn. If you'd like to learn more about how I mentor women to earn a time-leveraged income online, selling conscious, health-based products and learning the skills of personal branding and attraction marketing, both very sexy skills to have, then click on the link in the show notes or DM me the word info on Instagram so we can have a proper chat. I love having one-on-one convos with you savvy queens and showing you how this kind of income and our community can help you truly live wildly empowered. Big love, back to the episode.
Yeah, so when I first started the Little Milk Bar, Instagram still would not allow photos of breastfeeding moms. So it was a really hard struggle because how do you bring awareness to something if you can't show it? And so on social media, that was our biggest way to be able to reach a lot of people that we don't know, that don't live in our circle. But again, it was very hard because almost every post that I would post would get deleted or flagged and taken down. And so I felt a little defeated, to be honest. I felt like, what do I think I'm doing? Why do I think, like, how do I get this message across if I can't? Like, it's physically impossible. But I just thought I need to keep fighting. So I ended up putting up a petition because I just got so sick and tired of these videos and photos getting taken down as if we were doing something wrong, and we weren't. And so I put up a petition on like petition.org or something like that. And we got like 26,000 signatures in like a week or two. And so I think it really got the attention of Instagram and made them take notice of what was happening on the social media platform, especially because it's just such a double-edged sword, right? Like, it's not fair that you can show women in lingerie for ads or whatever. But when we're showing what our bodies were basically meant to do, then all of a sudden it's not okay. So what are we teaching, like, our young youth? That it's okay to show your body as long as it's meant to be sexual, but never for motherhood. And so I think that was like our whole message. And so finally Instagram took notice and they changed their community guidelines to allow breastfeeding photos. But at the beginning, that wasn't the case. It was hard. And so we got that overturned, which was an amazing victory for us. And I think that got the Little Milk Bar a lot of exposure because we weren't backing down. We were asking for all of the mothers in the world to rally behind us and sign this petition that mattered, not because of any other reason other than mothers deserve to show motherhood unfiltered. So I think that kind of gave me the first initial push of being able to show what this brand was about. And to be honest, back then, there weren't other breastfeeding brands showing breastfeeding photos. It was always like these beautiful images of moms in the park with a cover on. And it was like, how are these brands that are supposed to be promoting breastfeeding not even showing breastfeeding? Like they were hiding it even. So I think finally that cap came off and just exploded. And now I love seeing how many brands are showing breastfeeding. I love the moms who feel comfortable enough posting photos and videos of them breastfeeding in public. But like years ago, that would have never been the case. So it's amazing. We still have work because social media is still taking down some photos and videos. And I feel like that fight is just always be there. Still to this day, we can't run ads on half of our stuff because they get flagged for inappropriate sexual content when we're just showing breastfeeding babies, which is very odd. But I think, I don't know. Did I ask her your question? Maybe.
Yeah. Absolutely. And actually that feeds into my next question. I was going to ask about, your business journey and the Little Milk Bar and what potential challenges you might have faced, which obviously that would have definitely been one of them, the fact that you can't even market because of those ridiculous guidelines and rules. But is there anything else, like what challenges have you faced just in general in business, building obviously a business from the ground up and your previous business with kids' clothes as well?
Yeah. So there's so many ups and downs in businesses. Nothing is ever straightforward. And if anyone tells you it was easy, they're lying. To be honest, so starting the breastfeeding brand was hard for me personally. And that was because my mom was actually the one who kind of got me thinking to start the Little Milk Bar. I was at a wedding and breastfeeding my son, and she told me I should go feed in the bathroom. And it was that drive home that made me realize I needed to start a brand for all the moms who didn't know. Like my mom didn't know. That's how she was raised. So I remember the first photo shoot I did was walking down the street by my house with completely topless. I just had a jacket on. And the whole point was to make a statement that like, I have this jacket on, I'm breastfeeding my baby, I'm completely topless, and here's these photos. And you can't see anything. I hate when people say you are just going to pull your boobs out for everyone to see. I'm literally topless. My baby's breastfeeding and you still can't see my boobs because their face is covering, so it's just, I remember showing those photos to my mom and being very nervous for the first time because she was not on board with the business. And I'm very close with my mom. My mom is one of my favorite people in the entire world, but that's just something that took a while for her to get on board with. Now she's my biggest supporter. Now, like through this whole journey, she gets it. She's like, I didn't understand that. I was raised differently, but now I get it. And now I will stand behind you 100%. So there was that, but then also starting small. So I don't have like investors. I don't have a big like board that I, talk to every day. It's me. And I started with the boobs baby blanket, and I cut and sewed them myself at my kitchen table. And once we realized this is the brand that people needed, and we got a lot of orders in, and people were sharing their stories with how our boobs baby blanket changed their life, helped give them the confidence to feed in front of their mother-in-law for the first time. I realized this needs to be on such a larger scale. And so it was really hard to figure out how to go from kitchen table to having a fulfillment center where my product would already be made, get shipped to the fulfillment center and ship product, because again, at the beginning, I ran my business out of my home until 2022, actually. I moved into an office for the first time last September. And if I wasn't home for the weekend or I went on vacation with the family, orders couldn't ship. So I'm like, how do I get to that next level to be able to grow the business the way that I want it and the way I envision? And that was a big struggle because I don't know other business owners. I was all new to this role, just figuring it out as I went. But we figured it out.
That's amazing. And they are the best business stories, right? Because you have had to figure it out from the ground up. And like you said, business is not easy. It's always a learning. And that's where the most growth comes from is learning it and then being able to share the story, which is way more empowering than if you were like, oh, I had this like business mentor that told me everything to do. Like that's not everyone's going to have that. So that it's amazing what you've built and it's so empowering. I'd love to hear from you. Like, is there any sort of passing advice or wisdom or anything that I haven't asked you yet that you would love to share with mums, breastfeeding or otherwise, new mums on this journey?
Just know that, and I said this at the beginning, every journey is different, but I feel like it's really hard to see somebody online and post this beautiful breastfeeding photo and think, oh, it's so beautiful and serene and relaxing. And just know that probably 10 minutes before that photo was taken, that mom was probably in tears, struggling with some part of that. And it is not all rainbow and butterflies. It is not all easy. There are some times where you feel touched out for the day. Even still now, 18 months into our journey with Frankie, I still sometimes will get home from work and just be like, I need a minute. Like, I don't want her calling on me. Like, I don't want her on the breast right now. Like, I just need 10 minutes to myself, and just know that that's not being a selfish mom. That's being a normal human being. It is a lot of work. And don't try to compare to what you see on social media. I know that there's so much about like having a freezer stash and having hundreds and hundreds of ounces in your freezer. And sometimes that works for you. And sometimes that's what you need because of the lifestyle that you have. But also know, again, this is my third journey. I'm 18 months in with Frankie, and I think I have 2 bags of milk in my freezer. So I see a lot of questions come in that say, do I need to pump? When do I start pumping? When do I need to start building a stash? And like, it really is dependent on your lifestyle. Are you going back to work? Are you not? Are you staying home with baby? Because you may never need to pump if you don't want to. Pumping is not for everyone. Also know in the complete opposite, some women don't feed from the breast, but they'll pump and keep stashes for them and pump and feed breast milk through a bottle. So really, like, it's so important for you to understand that your journey is different than what you've seen from your neighbor or your aunt or your big sister. It really is just so important to make your own path and your own rules, because there's no one size fit all at all.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're even on a breastfeeding journey, you deserve a bloody medal, because it's so hard. And if you've made it that far, and you know, regardless of how you're feeding your child, if it's fed, that is winning. So I agree, like, even like regardless of what it looks like. And I think comparison is such a big thing, maybe more so with your first, because you're in like mothers groups and you're seeing like how other people are having a baby. Whereas like by the time you get to your second, you're kind of just like, we need to just get through this. Like, we just need to all survive, however that looks like. But yeah, comparison is the thief of joy. So I completely concur with all of that. Like, just do what is going to suit you and your family and your lifestyle. Such beautiful advice. So if anyone listening would like to go and check out the Milk Bar, the link to the website and also to Lindsay's Instagram is in the show notes. Is there anything else that you'd like to add in there, Lindsay, for people to look at?
No, you can go to our website, thelittlemilkbar.com. I just hope everyone knows that like our community is so supportive. Like, sometimes you go to mother groups and they're like, no, you can only feed this way, or no, you can only do this, or only give them this passy. And like our community of mothers that we have gathered on our journey on Instagram and TikTok, Facebook, and on our website is just so supportive of one another. I say it all the time, but there's not a better community on social media than ours because every single person is just so supportive. We're all supportive of each other. And we just love everyone.
Yeah, which is so needed and important when you're a mum because there, like I just said, there's a lot of comparison and pressure that we put on ourselves, actually, probably more than anything. I know with my first, I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect and, like with not only breastfeeding, but then introducing solids and, trying to be low toxin everything. And it's like, it ain't always, realistic to do that. So yeah, I do agree. Your community is absolutely beautiful, what you've built. So last question, if you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
Before we wrap up this episode, I want to ask you a question. Do you remember how you discovered this podcast? Was it a friend's suggestion or an Instagram story, maybe a post? Somehow you found it, and I'm hoping you're getting a lot of value from it. I need your help now to pay it forward so that other women can feel seen, heard, nourished, and more than anything, empowered from these conversations too. Big love, back to the episode.
21. I'm trying to think where I was at in life at 21. I was with my husband, but we weren't married yet. We were just dating. It was before kids, long before kids or marriage. What was I doing at 20? If I could give myself advice, it would be don't be scared. I remember at 21 trying to figure life out, and like I had just graduated college, and it was like you had to have, like, you should know what you're doing with your life. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And if I had just, I guess I made it here, but trusting myself and knowing that like it will work out and I'll find my path and I don't have to know what I'm doing right now. And yeah, it's crazy because when I was 21, I didn't want to get married and have kids ever in my whole life. So now I am with kids. So don't be scared to try new things and just know that you don't have to have it all figured out because nobody does.
Beautiful. I think every 21-year-old needs to hear that. Thank you so much for joining us, Lindsay. If you had any empowering moments or got value from that episode, please feel free to screenshot and share your stories on Instagram, tag myself and Lindsay. We'd love to hear what it was that you took from that. And if you have a new mum, friend, or maybe, know of someone that's expecting, perhaps share this episode with them as well so that they know that they even have the right and the opportunity to feed in public, because this is such a needed discussion and something that I think globally, women really need to be empowered to feed anywhere. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for joining us.
Yep. You're welcome. Thanks for having me.